Hi everyone! Welcome to QSplaining. I am Shannon Q. We have a brand new setup. For those of you who are seeing this for the first time, there was a little bit of a hiccup, and so this is our second version, but I think that we have all of the sound issues sorted out, so we'll just pretend that this is a clean slate. This is the first time. Nothing happened before. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I'm so glad you guys are all here. If you're new here, please remember to like and subscribe. We have just done some upgrades on the channel. As you can see below now, when you interact in the chat, you can see yourself on the little ticker down below. All your little icons come up, which is pretty cool. So if you want to interact with the chat, you get to be a part of the stream in real time so that we can see you guys engaging. So thank you for being here, and I'm really looking forward to this stream. I am going to be answering 10 questions for atheists today. This is something that was done by Trinity Radio and Braxton Hunter. Braxton is somebody that I've had on the channel before. He is somebody that I interact with frequently, and I say I like Braxton. And the spirit that he intended this with, or at least how I interpreted it, was that he wanted people to engage with this honestly with their own personal reactions. So I felt as though the best way to do it would be probably to do a live stream. I did watch it prior, so I had some time to formulate my thoughts, and I discussed this, the video itself with my boyfriend Paulogia. And so I thought that I would play them for you one at a time. There's 10 questions. The video itself is relatively brief. I think it's only about 8 minutes long, and we're not going to play the entire video, just the question portion, so that you guys can get to hear. People who were here earlier will find that funny because you couldn't hear, but now you probably can. People will get to hear the questions themselves. So I'm actually interested in hearing what you guys think about them as well. So engage in the live chat and engage in the comments section after. Let me know how you would answer these questions differently, how you see them differently, if I interpreted them a different way than you may have. I'm excited to see what you guys think. If you guys do have questions for me about some of my answers or some of the questions or how I perceive them, send me a super chat. Those will aggregate, or hold your questions until we're done going through all 10, and I'll take some questions after we are done. So without further ado, I am going to start playing the questions, and everyone who knows my channel, you just cross your fingers. Hopefully you guys will be able to hear it this time. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1.
What facts about reality that you and I agree are real facts about the way the world is does your worldview account for, but my Christianity doesn't account for, or at least doesn't account for well? And for those of you that would point out atheism isn't a worldview, I'm talking about your worldview that includes atheism. I can't think of any. Christianity accounts for evil, suffering, the existence of other religions, including supernatural events in those other religions, science, and differences among different denominations of Christianity. But I can think of many things that the most common worldviews that include atheism don't answer as well as I think Christianity does. Like universal supernatural claims, universal religious experiences, free will, morality, near-death experiences, beauty, the rapid expansion of the early church, the events surrounding the life and death of Jesus of Nazareth, and our shared longing for purpose and meaning. So what is it that Christianity doesn't answer as well as your worldview?
So I have some interesting thoughts about this question. One of my thoughts about the question itself is that he's phrasing it as though it's to atheists, but then he says that Christianity explains things, like morality, things like beauty, things that we would perceive as sort of subjective, for example. So I think that the explanation for morality doesn't exist within religion. But further to that, the answer to his question is that I don't think, or I think it's trivially foolish to think that atheism explains anything, really. Like, atheism doesn't really have any explanatory power. Saying I'm an atheist isn't an assertion of an explanation of anything at all, really, at all. So why the question? It seems as though there's this presumption built into the question here that atheism isn't as good as my particular worldview, that being Christianity in this instance, because I can make the assertion that Christianity explains things, everything, in fact. It explains all of the various things. I have a definition of Christianity that constitutes an explanation of everything, and thus it is true because I perceive it as being capable of explaining everything. Now, if you're approaching an atheist and saying, I conceive of a God that I believe is real, that by definition is the arbiter and creator of everything, and following through with that, he thus explains everything. There's no predictive power in that. Like, I can't look at that and say, oh, okay, because you have the explanation for everything, I can figure out a better way to perceive the world. I can make predictive models that I think have efficacy. It does nothing. If anything, I feel as though it undermines the endeavor to try to find things that have better explanatory power. Because if you feel as though what you already believe explains everything, then what is there left to explain? Right? Like you've already explained everything. Everything is explained. What is left to attempt to try to find an explanation for? What's left to discover there? There's nothing left to discover there if you buy into that as true, and if you believe that it truly can't explain everything, unless it's super surface level. Unless it's just saying, by definition, not through demonstration, I've defined a thing that its very existence is the explanation for everything. I mean, sure, you could do that, but then what from there? And thus what? And how do you discover that it's true? I suppose that would be my answer. Like, I sometimes uncover how I feel about things through talking them out. That's one of the reasons that I think that discourse is so important, especially honest discourse. But I think that that's where I land on that, is if you say, I can conceive of something that is the explanation for everything, then what? So? Like, so? Like, I great. You can conceive of something that explains everything. I could maybe conceive of something that explains everything, but that helps me not at all. Like, how do I go about my life utilizing that? How do I, like, what does that inform you about how to engage with other people, how to engage in the world, and how to understand what's going on around you? It's just an assertion to me. So, yeah, that's my answer to that one. So let's go on to question 2. Let's see what question 2 is. I'm intrigued to see what you guys have to think about these two, because like I said, I'm going off the cuff because I think that's the spirit in which it was intended. So I could fly off the rails. Sometimes I say all kinds of foolishness.
If your definition of atheism is merely that it's a lack of belief in God and you're just waiting to be convinced, but then you speak of him as though he's in some way synonymous with Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or fairies, doesn't that at least send the message to your listeners that you actually believe that there is no God? After all, these are entities and beings that you likely believe do not exist. And if your response is that you merely lack a belief in Santa Claus and don't actively believe that he does not exist, doesn't that sound a little disingenuous, honestly?
Okay, so I think that there is something meritorious about this if you take it into context. I don't think the question's meant for me in particular, because I would say that I actively don't believe that any gods that I've been presented with or have come across claims for, I would, flatly and outright reject them. Now, I think this question has more to do with when people are engaging in discourse and dialogue about this subject matter. A lot of the time, there is a significant amount of burden of proof tennis that takes place, where people kind of, parley back and forth regarding who should be proving what claim, as though that's the important part of the discourse. And some of the ways that an atheist can and will often I've seen it happen, get out of it, is engaging in a conversation by like starting a conversation and saying, well, I'm a lack of belief atheist. I just don't. And I think that this is a valid position to hold. I do. I think saying that I lack belief is a valid position to hold as you understand it and are able to articulate yourself, which is why I think that fighting about the nuances of labels about like atheist and agnostic and theist and deist, sometimes fighting about the nuances of the labels that people utilize for themselves is an exercise in futility when you can just ask them what they think. But all of that being said, because I don't want to go into the definition of atheism, there is a lot of back and forth regarding who should be proving their claims in a conversation. And it can be frustrating for theists, I think, sometimes, because many times that when they engage in this conversation, they maybe necessarily haven't even made a claim. They've been approached by somebody who is an atheist, who may be in a little bit of that angry atheist phase and is kind of on the attack, and anything that they say is perceived as a claim that they need to prove. So when somebody says something along the lines of, I'm a lack of belief atheist, but actively acts as though they don't believe in a God and can be aggressive about it, it seems as though there's a conflict of interest there. If you can say definitively that you don't believe in something like a Santa Claus or fairies or whatever, but you won't say definitively, I don't believe in a God. So I can see maybe where the question comes from, I guess is what I'm saying, where that frustration may lie. But that being said, often in my experience, when you see people utilize the Santa Claus analogies or the fairy analogies, they're attempting to demonstrate through that analogy that I have just as much belief in this mythical creature as I do in your wholly believed in God. Like, I perceive them as on the same level. So it's not a statement about what they believe. It's not a philosophical statement about what they believe. Sometimes it's more so an attempt to demonstrate that people see the claim level as similar. So I don't know if that answers Braxton's question, because his question was, do you think it's hypocritical to say I'm a lack of belief atheist and then actively talk about God or talk against God? But I think that kind of explains where some of that frustration might come from. And also, I mean, I don't utilize those analogies personally. So I guess the question just isn't for me. So I'm attempting to interpret the question as best I can based on somebody that it might be for. I guess. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good answer for you, Braxton. Braxty poo. Let's go. We'll go to the next one now.
When atheism becomes a part of someone's worldview, they typically change their positions on other issues like abortion, sexual morality, and a number of other things. I actually have several videos of well-known atheists saying that there's nothing wrong with prostitution, that they hope their children don't save themselves until marriage, and that sex workers should be put up on a pedestal no different than the military. I didn't use those here because I didn't want to seem combative to individuals, specifically the individuals who made those statements. But even if you didn't become an atheist just so you could sin, and I believe you, do you at least understand why those moves could send that message to people who might say that to you?
Okay, so this one has so many underlying assumptions built into it. And I'm not sure he even realizes that. Maybe he does. But anyway, so where do I start with this one? He's essentially saying, I don't personally think that you became an atheist because you needed to reject God to be comfortable with sin. But if you say things like these things that I just presented, then to someone like me, it seems like you did. Now, that's predicated on something that I'm not sure if he's acknowledged, and it's predicated on the idea that we perceive those things as sins or perceive sin as a thing. And we don't see sin as a thing. So this question is entirely, Braxton, coming from just your perspective and assuming that your perspective is, I guess, the only one that matters to the question. Because you're forcing us, people like me, into a position where we have to explain to you something like why we don't think sex work is wrong. I mean, sex work is work. That's the way that I look at sex work. Now, when you hear that, Braxton, when somebody like you hears that, they don't necessarily hear a nuanced argument that I have to back it up. They don't hear my reasons for it. They don't hear what thoughts I utilized to come to that position. They measure what I just said against their preconceptions and conceptualizations of what is or is not a sin and evaluate my position as bad. And then based on that evaluation, make a measurement saying, well, if she has those types of positions, that must weigh in somehow to the reason that she doesn't believe in this system, this religious system, because you can't believe in this religious system and evaluate those things and come to the determination that they're okay. So I think that's the baseline of where that question comes from. So do I think it's fair for someone to perceive an atheist as leaving a religion because they wanted to sin? No, I think it's ridiculous. I do. I think it's utterly ridiculous because you would have to hold the position that the person still believes in the deity, that deems that thing a sin, believes it is a sin, and is choosing to pretend they don't believe in that deity anymore, delude themselves somehow, just so that they can engage in that sin, which is trivially foolish, right? Like that just doesn't seem reasonable to me. Most people that Christians will even admit that they're all sinners, right? Not only will they admit it, they profess it frequently, like all the time, so much of the time. They profess, we're all sinners, we're all broken, fallen world, yada, 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 right? So all that into account, all Christians would admit wholeheartedly that they sin all the time. They sin all day, every day. All the time. They're just made of sin. They're just sinny sinners. And they're only saved through Jesus. So, that being the case, why leave? Leaving removes that failsafe if you really believe in it. It removes the opportunity for that atonement that saves your immortal soul. So it's not pragmatic to leave then. If you want to sin, it's pragmatic to stay. So it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, atheists don't leave because they want to sin. They leave because they don't believe anymore. And as a result, they don't think sin's even a friggin' thing. And if you still believe and you want to sin, it's smarter to stay if you really believe that that's the structure. Because if you leave and don't ask for forgiveness, you can't get forgiven and you're going to be condemned. If you stay, you're better off sitting if you stay. Right? If you believe it. So it doesn't make sense. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It feels as though it's an excuse of condemnation, where you can put yourself on a moral pedestal that segregates you from the people that hold a different belief system as you, so that you can say that they have nefarious reasons for believing something different and not legitimate ones. That's how questions like that track to me. And it seems as though it's a polarizing thing to do, and I don't like it. Sorry. I don't like it. The you just wanted to sin thing never made sense to me. And those are all of the various reasons why. Sorry, I had a lot to say on that one. And also, sex work is real work. And no one's putting, this is another thing. This one got to me. When you said you want to put sex workers on a pedestal next to military members. To me, that's like, that juxtaposition seems kind of purposeful. I know you said somebody said it, but atheists hold such a myriad, diverse amount of views regarding sex work, regarding the military, like yada, 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 yada. So this would have to be like a very specific sentiment that was expressed by a very specific person. And also, if somebody like me, I put neither of those on a pedestal. I see those as vocations. I don't put anybody on a pedestal based on their vocational, like if whatever choice you have of career, that doesn't, by, definition, by default, give you in this inherent or intrinsic set of values that I would ascribe to you and put you on a pedestal. I don't think it's healthy to venerate anybody, actually, or any group of people in that manner. So I don't know, was this question even for me, or was it for people that are watching you? I mean, don't ask atheists why they sin. Like, maybe I misunderstood. No, you're not asking why they sin. You're asking, do we understand that it could seem like that? I mean, yeah, I understand that it can seem like that if you think sin is a thing and you want to find ways to other people that don't believe in the same belief system that you have and segregate yourself from them in a way that you can feel morally superior. Sure. I understand that. I understand it. Don't think it's a good thing to do, though. All right, next one.
If it's a lack of belief sort of atheism, what is it? Is it 50-50, 60-40, 75-25? And at what point do you feel disingenuous saying that you merely lack a belief, as opposed to leaning towards, I believe that God does not exist?
I lean towards believing God does not exist. I don't think some of these are for me, really. Clearly, like there's other ones that later that I don't think are for me either, but I lean towards believing God doesn't exist. And also, I think in our realm, or at least the realm I exist within, people are usually talking about Abrahamic gods in particular when they're talking about these claims. And I've said prior that, I mean, you could maybe get me to some sort of like deistic panentheism, like some acknowledgement that those are plausible. If not, non-falsifiable, which I still hold up as an issue, but you could get me to just an admission that those are plausible. But that doesn't get me to Christianity at all. And I still, even if I think that there's a small degree of chance that any one of those systems that I just named or other systems could conceivably be plausible at all to whatever percentage value you wish to assign to them, I still don't believe them, because I don't feel that there's a reason to believe something simply because it's plausible, especially when it's not front loaded with, a set of, mandates. Like you can't, if you get to deism is plausible, then you're just getting to the point that maybe something did a thing, like that's it, and created the universe. Maybe something did a thing and created the universe. And you're labeling it. You're giving it a label of a god, and I don't necessarily know that that's fair. So I would still say that I'm an atheist there, because you haven't demonstrated to me that thing's anything like a god. And when you're engaging with atheists in the realm of these conversations, most of the time, Braxton, and you certainly are not, you're not talking about a deistic conception or this pantheistic conception. You are talking specifically about a specific god. Like you are talking about a very specific god and your conceptualization of that particular god. That's what you're talking about. When people are engaging with you and saying that they're an atheist and saying that they don't believe in God, or like they lack a belief, which is the way you worded it, they're lacking a belief, they're telling you likely there's this tacit understanding that in that engagement they're talking about the God that they know you believe in, not some conceptualization of a deistic, pantheistic, potential probable God. Like, I feel like it, I mean, so what? If you're like, so what? If I still lack a belief in those gods, but I think that they're potentially plausible. I absolutely think the Christian God 100% doesn't exist. No, I don't think any of the Abrahamic gods do. period, full stop, which are the ones that pertain to what you're preaching about and what your ministry is based on and what people are talking about when they engage with you. So if you kick the can down the road and say, well, you're a lack theist, that just means that you lack belief in gods. Thus, you don't like what? Who cares? Like, so what? I lack belief in a deistic God. I absolutely outright reject the Christian God. Like, is that the type of answer that you're looking for? Or is it, why don't people accept that you can just not believe a claim that's presented to you? Like, people see Christianity as a claim. People lack belief in a claim until it's demonstrated to them. So I think that's a relatively fair position to hold. But then to shift the window to say, well, if you say you lack belief, then you're also lacking belief in every conceptualization of God, is to remove the context of the engagement that you're potentially having or the subject matter that the person is talking about. Because everything has nuance. I don't know, I'm very long-winded and I probably went off track, but I think that that's valid because a lot of the times in these conversations, and this is something that's frustrating to me, is I feel as though when I'm engaging in these conversations, I'm talking specifically about the claim of the God that the person I'm engaging with believes in and why I don't believe in that. And then they just shift the window. Well, do you know how the universe started then? Like, well, no, neither do you either, but you're going to assert that you do because God did it and thus Christianity. Like, it's a bridge too far for me, right? It's a bridge too far. Like, you're smuggling your God into the claim for any potential God. That's the way I look at it. All right, next one. Hi, Braxton. I see you in there. I see you sneaking, Braxton. No mercy.
Now, I know we've all got our talking points, but I want you to struggle to be as sincere with yourself as you can right now. Doesn't it bother you a little bit that when we come to talk about the origins of the universe, and if there's a multiverse, the origin of that too, that the only real options you've got besides God is a past infinite universe, which is impossible, or the universe coming to exist uncaused out of nothing, or something far less clear than even those? It seems that for any worldview that includes atheism, there's a massive blind spot when it comes to the origin of the universe. And all the attempts to try and circumvent that problem seem desperate and at least far less likely than theism. My question isn't just what do you typically say about this, because I'm well aware of the responses. My question is simply this: when you step away from the debate mode that it's so easy for us all to get into online, doesn't this issue destabilize you a little bit? It seems to fit really poorly with any worldview that includes atheism.
Okay. So, this is where most atheists will honestly say, I don't know the answer to that, right? If anybody, this is the way I look at it. Maybe this is a good way to explain it. If you ask anyone, do you know how the universe started? And they say yes, they're wrong. They're wrong. They don't. Nobody does. That's the thing that's frustrating to me, because you're saying my position is absurd. My position that I don't believe in a God is absurd because I can't account for how the universe started, and you can. But what seems absurd to me is that you say you do know, because you can't either. So why is saying you do know how the universe started not absurd? Like, why is that not a huge friggin' leap? Why? Why is that not a massive leap? Why? Why is that not the absurd thing? The assumption that you know how the friggin' universe started. Why is that not what's ridiculous? Why? Why? Because it seems ridiculous to say I know how the universe started. I don't know how the universe started. I don't think it's absurd that I don't know how the universe started. I think it's absurd to assert that you do know how the universe started. That's what I think. And I don't know why that's weird, I guess. I just don't know why that's weird. And it gets me back to the point that I made before, is even if you say, well, the universe was started by something that predates the universe, right? Like, even like, well, I'll get away from your infinites are impossible argument, because if infinites are impossible, then God couldn't, it can't be impossible, right? Anyway, I'll get away from that and say, let's say, this is the way that I look at it, something started the universe. We'll say something started the universe, just for the sake of argument. Okay, something started the universe. How do we attribute properties to the something that started the universe? What does that inform us about that thing, just knowing that a potential something started the universe? It informs us what about that thing? How do we ascribe it attributes? How do we make determinations about what it wants or if it's capable of wanting anything? How did that thing start to exist? If that thing existed infinitely, why aren't there other possible infinites? If it's possible for something to exist infinitely, then it's just possible for something to exist infinitely. So why is this the only thing? It seems like special pleading to me. Right? Am I wrong about that being special pleading? That I'm saying infinites are impossible and something had to predate the universe. But also the thing that I'm saying predates the universe existed infinitely. That doesn't compute to me. I don't, like, that doesn't mesh well to me. It doesn't make sense to me. And even if you get me, like I said, to the point where we get to like what you would describe as a deistic view, where something, I'll accept everything for the sake of argument and say, okay, something existed that predated the universe that, you know, got the ball rolling. Okay, I'll accept all that on face value. What does that tell me about that thing? Nothing. You have to start ascribing it attributes. You don't know what the attributes of that thing are any more than you know how the friggin' universe started. The difference between you and I is I'm saying all of that is incredibly mysterious and interesting, and you're saying, well, I already know how it happened. And because you don't, you're the crazy one. And that blows my mind. Anywho, I don't know. I'm excited to see what you guys think about this stuff, because I'm kind of rambly, and I'm going off the top of my head, which is sometimes a mistake. But you wanted honest off-the-cuff answers, Braxton, so I'm doing you a solid. All right, let's go to the next one. We are on, what question are we on?
Of the arguments for God's existence, is there one that to you seems more interesting than the rest? Is there one that for you actually does weigh in favor of theism? Which one?
It's a quick question. I'm going to give you a quick answer. None of them. I think they're all equally implausible. That's why none of them convinced me. If I found any of them convincing, I would have been convinced by them. And I don't see something being convincing in degrees. There's some that I find more interesting, obviously. Arguments to do with the soul and morality I find the most interesting, because I learn the most engaging with those ideas. And they're just something that I'm interested in personally. But yeah, they all seem the same to me. That's there's not one that I'm personally invested in. Sorry, I know that's probably not a satisfying answer, but it's the answer. All right, on to question 7.
Most atheists I've met humbly admit that they don't think they can have absolute certainty about much of anything. But what they want from the Christian is a demonstration that God exists, or that Christianity is true. Well, when we offer the reasons to believe that we do have, those are typically deemed not good enough. So what sort of evidence, if any, would be enough to convince you? Do you know? And since it's often a conversation stopper, let's take experimental reproducibility off the table, since that's not even always necessary for science.
Oh, you're going to have to lean in. We almost wrecked this place. Guys, this is Paulogia. He and I had a conversation about this earlier. Did I mute myself? Good, I didn't. I'm a nightmare when it comes to sound. So we had a conversation with this earlier, and I was going back and forth about this specific question about the ideas that I have surrounding it. And his answer was so good that it's essentially my perspective now as a result of talking it through with him. And I thought it was so good that I felt hesitant to present it as my view, because it didn't seem like it would be fair to say, to make it seem as though I had an idea like this that was this good independently. And I'll tell you why I think it's really good after I let him. You can talk now. Hi, this is Paul.
Hey. So first of all, in case someone else came up with this idea sooner, I'm not taking credit, but this is my thoughts recently. 2020 has been a long year, but in this year, I've had conversations with both young Earth creationist Eric Hovind, as well as Sean McDowell, Dr. Sean McDowell, expert on the apostle martyrdom, and both of them posed this question to me during our conversations, and both times I gave the Matt Dillahunty answer, which has been my answer for a long, long time, and that answer is, I don't know what it would take to convince me, but an all-knowing God would know, right. And he hasn't.
Yes.
So for the longest time, I mean, that is a great answer. That's a fantastic answer because that's generally truthful.
But it has problems built into it, though, because you're essentially saying, I don't think that personal experience is good evidence, but the only thing that would convince me is personal experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And that,
which is what I was caught up on.
Lingering behind that for myself. And when both Eric and Sean pressed me on this, I got to admit, I kind of went behind the scenes and thought, it's not a great answer. I get why it's not a very great answer for a Christian.
Yeah.
It's a cop-out. It is a cop-out. I mean, it's truthful. It's a truthful cop-out. So I thought about it more, and I've had time to think, and it would have to be personal experience, because I don't feel like any of the arguments from philosophy or any of the arguments from the authority of the Bible compelling in the least. None of those things as they sit. And, short of new manuscripts, and I can't even imagine what new manuscript would convince me. So I thought this through. Personal experience obviously would be compelling for me, but not necessarily compelling for other people, and that's okay. Personal experience, it would have to be. But Sean pressed me on, well, if it was personal experience, Paul, you've said on record that you would wonder if it was a hallucination, and of course you would. Why would you not at least consider that this personal experience I had was a hallucination or something? The brains are mysterious things. We don't always know how they work. But, so the thing that I now feel like I would do, if I'm ever in this position, I will ask the person communicating to me personally, or the being communicating to me personally, to share with me something that I don't know, and ideally something that no one on earth knows. Now, if you Google unsolved math problems, there are dozens and dozens of very famous math problems that often have like $100,000 million prizes to the mathematician who will solve them, and some of them have been lingering around for decades, if not centuries. So what I would ask this being to do, the kind of evidence I'm looking for, is a personal experience where this person gives me something like the answer to one of these unsolved math problems that I know I am not good at math. So if they gave it to me, there's absolutely no way that me, the only person in the world, got the right answer to this math problem that I probably don't even understand how it's posed. So that is my new answer. What would absolutely convince me? A personal experience where they're giving me unique information that I know for certain I could never have.
Yeah, and here's why I like that so much. Because like I said before, I struggled with saying, because I know through studying psychology just how unreliable personal experience can be, right? So, and that's one of the reasons when people give their personal testimony, you're like, yeah, okay, like that's neat that you had that experience, but there's a million ways you could have misinterpreted that. So if you're saying a personal experience is what could convince me, that's an honest answer. It really is an honest answer, because it likely is what convinces most people of their belief structures. Like, just realistically, I think it likely is what convinces most people of their belief systems is a personal experience of some sort. But as an atheist, when you're asked that question, that paradigm exists where you're saying, well, it is what would convince me, but I don't think it should be enough to convince you, but it's definitely what would convince me. And that seems off. But this way, like, because you aren't a mathematician and you aren't thinking about these problems, that adds a degree of extra verification that doesn't need to be, like Braxton said, verifiable or repeatable in science. Right. It's something that isn't verifying the existence of God, but it's verifying the efficacy of that experience.
Right. That's the part.
Right. It's verifying that personal experience is something that did in fact happen, and not something that you maybe had like a delusion, or maybe you were hallucinating, or maybe this was like some sort of lucid dream that you have, like blah, 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 blah. All the reasons to think that it may not be accurate that we would cling to and utilize when we're arguing against other people who say that their personal experiences are proof. This would be a way to not verify God exists, but verify that you had that experience. Exactly. And I thought that it was super parsimonious, because these math problems do exist, and you would never in a million years solve one of them.
No.
But God could!
Too busy drawing cartoons.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it so much. So he had no intention of being on the stream, but I made him. So if you don't know who Paulogia is, he's adorable. He has a channel called Paulogia, and you can go subscribe to that channel. Say bye. Now you have to leave.
Bye, I'm off.
We're all done. Anyway, I'm going to put you back on full screen, and we'll go to the next one.
To what extent did social and moral issues start you down the path toward your atheism? That is to say, the typical Christian or religious views on sexuality, gender, rights, and acts and commands of God in the Old Testament. It seems that many deconversion stories online begin with, or at least include, LGBT issues, purity culture, or hell as instrumental in the deconversion process. It strikes me that what should matter most is the truth and not what we might prefer that the truth were. I honestly wonder how much those issues and ones like them motivate the deconversion rather than all this talk about evidence.
Okie dokie. So I don't think that this question is necessarily for me either, because none of those motivated my deconversion. Really, they just didn't. I didn't deconvert because... Let's try to figure out what he's saying here. Is he saying, like, it feels to me as though this kind of comes back to the, you sure you didn't just want to sin? Are you sure you didn't just want to be the gay, or have an issue with some of God's moral imperatives? So that's why you left? Or is he saying that it seems as though so many people focus on those issues, and that gives the impression, I'm going to assume the latter, because I think the latter is more generous, that it seems as though many people focus on these types of things, so that might seem as though it's their reason, or they explicitly state that it's their reason, or it was part of their reason. Now, I can't really answer for myself, because I had the type of faith where I always believed in evolution. I was pro-choice. I was LGBTQ plus affirming. I was like, and believed in God, and went to church, and was an altar. Like, I didn't perceive conflict there when I was in the faith. Many do. I was not one of them, so it didn't factor into my deconversion, would be my answer. Now, I have at least a partial answer towards why you see it so much. I don't think, Braxton, that you see it so much because it was their reason for deconversion, though it may well have been. I think one of the reasons that you see it so much is because those are groups of people who feel the most damage from religious adherents attempting to assert their moral doctrines onto others. And they exist in societies or families or cultures where them being who they are is perceived as deleterious and dangerous and wrong because of belief structures that others ascribe to and attempt to assert on them. Because here's the thing. Like I said, I was the type of Christian where I could go through many a mental contortion. And admittedly, I had to go through many a mental contortion to reconcile my morality and my perceptions on these sorts of things with the things that I saw in the Bible through a series of, excuses and, and mental gymnastics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that there's people that cannot, but there definitely is people that can and do and did, and I was one of them. Now, you ended off by saying we should care about truth. Now, if you are the type of person who, or not the type of person, if you are one of the people who, realizing that you are gay, caused you to analyze your faith more and get to the point where you left it, I can see that as being a catalyst often. And it would make sense, it being a catalyst to look further. You're imbuing these people through this question with the assumption that they kind of wanted to be gay and decided to leave the faith because that was the only way that they could, guilt-free be gay or whatever, or be pro-choice or blah, 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 blah. Now, you could be LGBTQ, like I am, and this isn't me, but I'm just going to use myself as the example here. This wasn't my path, so this is just a hypothetical. And feel to yourself this pain and constraint and conflict due to the people around you and the belief structure that you ascribe to and believe in, giving you the message that you are not okay and you shouldn't be you and that you're irreparably broken and need to do something about it, to change yourself in order to comport with that moral system and be accepted by your friends, your family, your peers, and your God. And that could lead you down a path where you start to analyze the faith more, like many of us do or did, to kind of throw yourself into it to really find the truth in it in a time of need. And that could lead you to honestly assessing, that being the catalyst, could lead you to honestly assessing each one of those claims individually and coming to the realization that they're not true based on your assessments. So I can see that being the catalyst. Absolutely. You seeing it being prevalent isn't a sign that people are saying, I want to be gay and I want to be pro-choice and I want to do immoral stuff, so I guess I can't be Christian anymore. That was fun. Off I go then. Now I'm just not going to be a Christian because I don't care about the truth. I just care about being gay. That's like, no. No. These people are like, if you want to retain people in the church, I'd start like maybe not picking on the LGBTQ people. I'd start working on some affirmation and acceptance because it's gonna be a catalyst, and maybe people will find people like me and authors and podcasts and lecturers and academics and philosophers that analyze these things and speak to them, and then they come to the honest realization that, oh yeah, maybe some of this is crap, and I don't believe it anymore because I don't have a good reason to. And they may not have gone down that road had they not been really pushed. They may have just accepted it. So, I don't know. That would be my answer to that. I can understand why it would be a catalyst. I'm sure some people maybe did. I mean, everything is an anomaly. It had nothing to do for me. And also, who cares? Like, so what? So what? Right? Like, what is that, like, what is the question getting at? Like, what is the question attempting to communicate to atheists or Christians, really? That sometimes people become atheists just because they want to believe in things that I perceive as immoral? Or that God or that I feel as though God perceives as immoral. I mean, that even that doesn't get you to truth. So I don't think anything about the question gets you to truth. And you pose the question as though, or to me, I perceived the question as being that, so I could be wrong. I perceive the question as being posed as, if you have those as even amongst the list of reasons for your deconversion, then maybe you don't care about truth. And I don't think that's fair, I guess, would be my answer to that. All right, let's go to another one. This is kind of fun. I should do more of these, maybe. I am so mouthy, though. This is probably a bad idea.
Can you name the last 3 academic books you read by theists on the subject? How long ago did you read them? Or is most of your understanding of apologetics and atheism from non-scholarly internet sources, pop-level books, and, let's face it, YouTube videos? And be honest with yourself about this. Anyone can Google up a list of books and paste them in the comments section. But I want to know, are you getting the best from the other side?
Womp, womp, womp. YouTubers. Braxton's a YouTuber, too. Okay, so this question is an interesting one. As somebody who engages in this subject matter a lot, I don't know if this was necessarily meant for me either, but I'm going to act as though it was. Because, I mean, I've had Braxton on this channel. I've had scholars on this channel. I do read books from time to time, and have read some theistic, like the last one I think I read was the Screw Tape Letters, although I don't know if you would see that as scholarly. It's a C.S. Lewis book. So anyway, I have read some of them. But again, I'm back to the, why, like, so what? If you're saying that you should only hold any form of ideological position if you have done a sufficient amount of research and engaged in a massive amount of study into the subject matter, then, I mean, okay, sure, if that's your position, but that kind of goes both ways, right? Because you always see Christians, or theists in general. I shouldn't just say Christians, and I shouldn't say you always see Christians, because I have a sampling bias. Like, take into account that I have a sampling bias here, because I exist in this sphere where we're engaging with people all the time. Like when you just walk down the street, Christians aren't going to necessarily come up to you and be like, yeah, but have you read the latest William Lane Craig book? It's just not the way the world works, right? We're in a weird, warped realm where you have to kind of explain how much academic rigor you went through in order to hold your position, because, you know, we're essentially doing performative apologetics for like the world to see. Anyway, all that being said, what I see, I shouldn't say you see, because that's what generalizes it. What I have seen in my experience in these types of dialogues, which I think may be feeding some of what Braxton is questioning, because he exists in the same sort of realm, only on the opposite side, is that when you're an atheist, and you're engaging with someone and they're attempting to explain something to you, like someone who is a theist, they'll often say, well, I read this book, you should read this book. Like, if you didn't read this book, then you can't talk to me about the subject matter. And for us, that's actually kind of frustrating. Because, you know, I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to a book. But even going beyond that, what you can sometimes see is this perception that leaving your faith means that you have a lack of knowledge in the faith, and that's the only reason that you left it. And if you had had just a bit more knowledge, you would have retained it. But the same standard Christians don't apply internally, right? Like, you don't do that same sort of test when somebody converts to Christianity. You don't walk up to them and go, yeah, but have you read any Graham Oppy? Like, how many atheist scholars did you read before you converted to Christianity. Because I don't think that you should or can justify holding your position as a Christian until you have fully exhausted every Christian scholar that you can get, or every atheist scholar that you can get your hands on and philosopher. Only then and only then will I accept that you are a Christian and have thought this through. Like, you don't see them do the same thing. Now, to give Braxton a bit more charity, I suppose. If you're frequently, as a Christian or as a theist or as an apologist of any ilk, watching people just talk out of the side of their mouths about their opinions on something, and you feel as though they're talking about academic subjects without engaging the academia surrounding the subject matter, that, I mean, I can see that as being somewhat frustrating, but we're talking about belief systems here. And you pose this question to atheists, not to, public atheist activists, but atheists in general. And I mean, I just don't know, man. What does it matter? What if I read all of them? What if I somehow had a magic wand and I could pause time and not age, and I just spent half a millennia reading, absorbing, and engaging in every single religious text, like scholarly religious text that was available to me, and I still didn't believe at the end? What then? Right? I don't know. Like, it seems as though a way to set up, you need to have sufficient reasons to hold this position. And I think everybody, like, that's a good thing to just believe in general. Like, you should always ensure, that's one of the primary things I say on my channel, is advocate for your own understanding. It's like, it's imperative, absolutely imperative, especially in the culture we exist in now when there's so much information available to us and we're so inundated and it's difficult to discern. You should absolutely advocate for your own understanding, and you should be able to support the beliefs that you have. But to say you did you didn't read X amount of books, or you didn't read these particular set of books, or if you had read these books, you think differently. I don't get the point of it. Like, to be fair, the last book that I read, I'm reading The Body Knows the Score right now. Before that, I read Brain Bugs, and before that, I read Thinking Fast and Slow, because I like to read books on neuroscience. But I have read the Screw Tapes Letters. That's probably the last one. Before that, I read The Righteous Mind because I think that that's a marriage, but I don't read a lot of theology, to be fair. But what I do, because it doesn't interest me as much, what I do, to answer your question personally, so that it doesn't seem as though I'm skirting around it, I'm dyslexic, so I don't actually learn a great deal through reading. I listen to books or read them, or a combination of the two usually is best for me in order to be able to absorb the books. So that's what I tend to do, is read and listen in increments. If you know anything about learning, one of the ways that I learn best and can challenge myself the best is engaging in conversation and in dialogue and having somebody actively in real time challenge my ideas. So what I do is I seek out people who think differently from me, and I engage in dialogue with them. So I talk to philosophers themselves who believe differently than me. I talk to scholars who believe differently than me. I talked to a medical doctor who knew about brains. His name was Luke. He's lovely. About conceptualizations of the soul, who he happened to be a Christian. And so what I do is I seek out a way to challenge myself that way, because I know that I know myself well enough to know that I'm not going to retain interest in the book, likely. But I can learn about the subject matter and challenge my ideas about the subject matter by finding somebody who's an expert and exposing myself to them. And I do it publicly in order to help benefit other people who may be like me, because not everybody, and this is something that frustrates me. I'm a mental health advocate, so this is a thing that this does frustrate me. Not everybody learns well through reading. It's just a fact. I learn a lot more through listening to lectures and engaging with people. than I do through reading because I'm dyslexic and a little bit ADD, so I need to usually multitask, and I work better if I can think on my feet and engage in real time with the ideas. I'm the type of reader that I will go 3 or 4 pages flipped before I and not even realize what I just read because my mind is wandering while I'm reading, and it sometimes is effortful for me. So the answer to your question is the most recent one I can remember is the Screw Tape Letters. I often listen to more audiobooks. I don't engage in theology texts as much as neuroscience texts because those are the ones that interest me the most. And if that means that you don't think that I'm knowledgeable enough to be an atheist, then I would say, come on and challenge me. And talk to me about it. Otherwise, I don't understand the point of the question. All right. I think we're on the last question, guys. And then I'll read the super chats. Oh, I forgot I have channel memberships. People signed up to be members. Oh, you guys are so sweet. That's so nice. I appreciate you guys. All right, so this is the last question, guys. Thank you for sticking around. I super duper appreciate it, especially since we had a false start. The last one's going to be a quick one. I'm going to have a pretty quick answer. Maybe. Quick for me. So somewhere around 45 minutes to an hour, probably.
Let's finish with a pretty common one. If you found out today to your satisfaction that Christianity were true, would you accept God's authority, repent of your sins, and trust Jesus as your king?
Wah, wah, wah. All right, so that's the last one. The first part of it seems like a tautology to me. It's like, if you found out the Christian God was true, would you believe that it was true? Like, if you knew it was true, would you know it was true? That's what it sounds like. I mean, yeah, if I knew it was true, I would know it was true. So I would believe that it was true because I knew it was true is the answer to that, to your hypothetical. Going further, I thought about this one, and this one's an interesting moral paradigm to me because would I believe it and would you do something always kind of comes back to why. Now, why would I believe it? Now, would I believe it because I knew it was true? Yes. Would I worship, though? What would be my motivations for worshiping? Now, the nearest I can figure, my motivations for worshiping would either be to get a reward or to avoid harm. That's what I boil it down to, right? So I would be worshiping God because I either want to go to heaven or I don't want to go to hell. Because there's a built-in incentivization structure, right? So here's the quandary, which is I think a lot of the quandary for believing Christians is, even if you see God as, and I think the Christian God, especially as he's presented in the Old Testament, is, I mean, he killed literally everyone except for one family. Like everyone on earth, including babies, all of them, and then killed all the firstborn sons of each. Like, those are bad things, right? I would, like, in isolation, if I said, I know of a being that killed, like, at least all the babies on earth at one point. Like, would you worship that being? You'd probably say no, unless there's this incentivization structure built in where either you believe it and get a reward or don't believe it and get a punishment. And both of them are eternal. I don't want eternal punishment. But, like, is performative worshiping going to get me a reward? If I act as though I'm worshiping him, even though internally I think you're kind of crappy. Like, I know you exist now. Well, like, for the sake of this argument, we'll say I know you exist. I didn't think you did. I'm sorry. Whatever. Do I pretend to worship something that I don't think is good just to get a reward or to avoid a punishment? Like, I feel as though if he's God in that scenario, like when I thought this through, as much as I think anything through, if he's God in the scenario and the Christian God knows everything, knows what I'm thinking, he's going to know that I'm doing it performatively to prevent myself from being punished. So I'm likely not going to get that reward anyway. So, and also I'm one of the gays, so I mean, I got that as a streak against me. I've done the adultery. Like, if I found out, it would likely be because I died, so I probably didn't repent. Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't know. I don't think I would. And if I did, it would be to avoid punishment or get a reward. And saying that makes me not like myself very much. But I also think it might be true. So I guess that's my honest answer is I don't know. Like, I could heroically be like, I reject you. Damn you. You killed all those babies. You condemned all my friends to hell for just being gay people. Like, you made cancer exist. Screw you. Like, bah. But then I'm gonna go to hell forever in that scenario. So I don't know. I mean, first part's a tautology. The second part's an interesting intellectual quandary. I mean, if I knew he was true, knew he existed, I'd know he existed. That's just a tautology. Like, what your question is, would I believe something I already know? So yeah, in that hypothetical, of course I would, because I already know it, so I'm going to believe it. But the real question is, would I worship him? Like, I don't know. Like, if he's the God of the Bible? Like, I feel like I'm going to hell no matter what in that scenario. Because I don't like him. And then in this scenario, it's true. Like, would he have to do something to redeem himself to me? Do I have a legitimate reason, like a value-driven, legitimate reason to not like him and be mad at him in that scenario? And if I do, and he's a perfect God, he would have to acknowledge that I have a legitimate reason, unless he's essentially made of spite, and you can't be perfect and made of spite. See, all of these things are the concept of the Christian God. Just, it falls apart to me upon further analysis, but I can understand why it feels good, I guess, to get the reward and avoid the punishment, to see the people that you love after death, to feel as though no matter what's going on in your life, no matter how lonely you feel, that there's something there that loves you. I can understand, and that you have some sort of salvation, and that you get to go on and exist eternally. I can understand the incentivization there. But when you start to examine the minutiae of it, it all falls apart to me, I guess is my answer. And I think that's it. So let's see if I have any super chats. I have so many super chats. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Thanks, guys. I guess I'll start at the top. I didn't anticipate this. Thank you. Very cool. The first one I see says, hello from Japan. Hi. Hello from Nova Scotia. The second one is from Rodent. No last name. That's cute. I just want to thank you for your intelligence, patience, and eloquence. You've entertained me through some tough times when I was broke and houseless. I'm so sorry. You said when, so I hope that that's worked out for you. I've got some scratch in the bank, so I'm now paying some metaphoric back rent. Oh, you're so kind. Thank you. That's very nice. Oh, yay. I've got P as a member. Thank you for being a member. That's super cool. That's awesome. Thanks for joining. Rodent, no last name again. As a species, we are different because our intellect can override our base instincts, which we colloquially call morals. I think that there's... So, don't get me started on morals. Don't get me started on morals. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. See if that fits in with my perspective on morals, which I recently kind of outlined briefly on Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, that's probably a good idea. I wouldn't. But if you want to, it's flashing on the little thing on the screen. Licia Fox. Oh, just $10. Thank you. I appreciate you. Rubswind. I am very positive that if we change all soldiers to sex workers, the world will be a better place. Just saying. That's interesting because everybody would be having sex instead of killing each other. So, I mean, yeah, I feel like I can get on board with that, actually. I feel like I could get on board with that. Okay, so there are not questions for atheists, but questions to insult atheists. Fred, now, I've engaged with Braxton in the past, And I don't want to imbue him with nefarious intent, especially since one of the things that I said was something that it seems like some of his questions might do. And I hope I was fair. I can sometimes be a motor mouth, is to do that. So I think it would be a fair idea when we're engaging to assume the best possible intent and engage with the questions in that matter. But on the flip side of that coin, Fred, I absolutely know that there are some people who have, in fact, made questions specifically because they think they're all just gotchas and they want to just high-five each other about how awesome they are because they got all the atheists and they owned us, which isn't a fruitful way to engage in dialogue or public discourse or find anything out, really. Oh, Braxton. Hi, Braxton. So Trinity Radio. I think this would be Braxton. I don't know if it would be the other guy. I genuinely appreciate that you took the time to cover my content. I haven't been listening. How dare you? But I will listen. Peace and friendship. Oh, well, I hope you do, and I look forward to your feedback. I anticipate that I will probably get some feedback because I engage with Braxton. S. Michael, you guys sent so many super chats. This is really nice. Shannon Rocks, Devil Horns. Devil Horns. Northwestern Ontario. Hey. Hi, S. Michael. Benny Olson. True, so true. Rock on from Denmark. Thanks. I'm so bad at reading names. I'm so sorry. Luminia M. Love you, Shannon. Thank you for making these ideas clear for this indoctrinated old lady. Oh, honey, thank you. I'm glad that somebody thinks that I'm a clear communicator because sometimes I just ramble. So it's very nice of you to say. Thank you. I take that to heart. Lloydie again. I didn't change my views on religion because of LGBT. I changed my views on LGBT after leaving religion. Interesting. Some people did. But yeah, I know a lot of people who did, actually. That's a valid point. There are many, many people who had this perception that it was, a moral wrong and then left for other reasons and started to evaluate their conceptualizations of morality and realized that they couldn't, outside of a prescription that it's immoral, which is essentially what the God-based moral system that deems it immoral is. It's just a prescription. I say it's bad, so it's bad. They couldn't justify it in any moral system that requires epistemic justifications. So they let it go and realized, oh, hey, maybe not so bad. maybe I should be better about these sorts of things. So yeah, absolutely. I think that that there's nuance there. There's people who held myriad positions before and after, during, whatever. So yeah, very cool. Very valid point. Sasha Campbell. I never was forced to view religion as a dictating aspect of my life. I wasn't so much either, really. I mean, to some degree, but not to the degree that I see prevalent in some other religions. Yeah, I was evolution, I couldn't believe it when I found out. I was super religious. I was an altar girl. I was competitive at being religious at my Anglican church. And it blew my mind when I found out that there was people who didn't believe in evolution. I was just like, what do you mean? But why though? That seems, what? How? It's same with some other things. It's just an example where I just didn't see them as not being compatible with my belief system until I started really analyzing the source material for my belief system. And then I was like, oh, well, oops. Where am I getting the stuff I believe from? Because it's not here. I'm being taught it externally. So Terrence Clark, they have it backwards in my opinion. Most ex-Christians I've met left first, then came to the conclusion that evangelical Christian morals are a problem. That makes sense too. That makes some sense too. Money for Paul to jump on camera and say hi. Okay, come say hi.
Where am I?
Say hi.
Hi.
Do you want to stay for super chats, or are you?
Sure, I can stay for
okay.
super chats.
You can stay for super chats. Okay, this is what you paid for. I think I'm gonna need to switch now though, because you're I'll move over. Can you scooch?
I can scooch.
Because I think I've pushed you off camera. Okay, I think that's probably a little bit better. Okay, Braxton again. Shannon, I hope you read through my comments in the chat. Whether you do or not, I hope this is helpful during COVID. It was interesting to do. Yeah, this is helpful during COVID. We're in quarantine right now. We are in quarantine right now for 2 weeks. It's day 2 of us being locked in a house with a cat who wants to kill Paul in his sleep. She really does. She doesn't like you. Allison became a member. I have members. Because on my thing.
What do members get?
They get my gratitude and they get, I don't know yet, really. Oh, some of them get social media. I have to look at my rewards. I set it up a long time ago and I never advertised it and I didn't expect anybody to ever sign up.
There's some people with cool icons.
Oh, that's right. They have cool icons. You get icons in the chat. And, what else? I think you don't have to do slow mode in the chat either, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you get cool stuff. That's neat.
And
And there's a members only, like the community tab. There's one that's just members only, so that I can communicate with people.
Sweet.
Yes, so you get that stuff.
I'm gonna sign up for that.
And maybe you're gonna sign up. You can do that or Patreon, or I have a buy me a coffee thing too. If you want to buy me a coffee, if you want to support the channel, and if not, then whatever. I do this for free. If you want to support, then cool. I'll buy Paul Band-Aids. My cat's trying to kill. It's really bad. She doesn't like him at all. Maybe be nicer to the cat. Stop looking at her funny.
I'm a dog person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a cat person. This is never gonna work. This is the day we were gonna break up live on stream. My cat's not going anywhere. What are your best recommendations on neuroscience books? Oh God. Okay. I reamed a couple of them off. Thinking Fast. It depends on your level. Brain Bugs is a really good one. Really good if you want to talk about perception. Thinking Fast and Slow is a little bit more of a trounce through read because it gets fairly technical and it's pretty dense, but it's good. It also depends on the subject matter. Like I said, the one that I'm reading now, or listening to, actually, it would be, is The Body Knows the Score, and it's about trauma therapy. The back end of the book I'm about. The front end of the book I was really engaged in, like learning a bit more about how neuroanatomy interacts with external emotional trauma. It's really, really interesting. So that's pretty cool.
From my level,
oh yeah, okay,
Sam Harris wrote some good stuff. And I can't think of the titles, but it really got me into
I've only read 2 of his books.
Understanding some of the problems of hard problem of consciousness, and some of the things that if you're just like newbie like me, there's some. Although I know that's philosophy, but there was anyway. He's a neurosurgeon.
Yeah. So that's interesting because the only books of his that I've ever read are The Moral Landscape and Free Will. I read those 2, so maybe I'll look at it. I don't necessarily like him really. But that doesn't mean he didn't write a good book.
Yeah,
it's still worth reading the.
As book. I recall, and I can't think of the name. I suck, but it was. I remember it being not at a higher. It was
like it's palatable.
You're talking about a guy who believed what Ken Ham believed, right?
Not that long ago.
Not that long ago, I was Kent Hovind, so I needed it dumbed down, and that worked for me, at least to ramp me up.
Okay, cool. Well, that's good. Yeah, because I already have a base understanding of a lot of it because I have that whole degree thing that I paid all that money for. Interesting. Okay, cool. I'll keep reading. But yeah, I think those are the ones that I've read recently that I would suggest. One that doesn't really go into neuroscience, but really talks about like social dynamics really well, and anthropology and sociology and psychology, and marries them well together through the history of the species, is Sapiens.
That was the other one I was thinking. Yeah, thank you. I couldn't think of the
Sapiens is a good book. Yeah. Sapiens is a good book. Okay, cool. All right. So thank you, Caleb, for the question. Yeah. So the Holy Spackle. So I have dyscalculia. Not everyone who struggles with math is unintelligent. The same goes for reading. Neuroatypical doesn't mean unintelligent. Absolutely. I agree. I'm also dysgraphic too, which is like because like if you look at it on paper, it looks like did a 9-year-old Yeah. Anyway. All right. So, Lloydie, hi again, Lloydie. Oh my gosh, you guys, stop sending super chats. My goodness, I'm never gonna be able to. We're gonna be here for 3 hours.
Keep going. I
mean, I can.
Keep sending super chats.
I don't feel like they're getting their money's worth. All right. If I knew it was true, I wouldn't be an atheist anymore. But if the Bible is true, if I knew it was true, I wouldn't be an atheist anymore. But if the Bible was true, I would not worship. I would actively fight against that God. See, that's interesting. That's the quandary to me. Like, what could you do, though, if he is God? He could just poof you. Like, he could just mess with you. It's an interesting quandary, yeah?
Right, yeah, I'm not sure
What would you do?
I'm a pragmatist. I would 100%, if the Christian God is real, as depicted in the Bible, then hell, well, my answer is always, it depends on what hell is true.
Depends on what hell is true.
So if
Oh, like if there was an annihilationist?
if you're annihilation,
I'd just be like, poof me.
Right, if you're annihilation hell, yeah, I'm good. Good to meet you, God. I'm glad I got that checked off to know that you can annihilate me.
Yeah.
But if it's the eternal torment, eternal conscious torment, ECT, then I'm going to be the pragmatist and worship. So
I don't know, man. Like, I feel like...
I'm not sure the moral stand, in the short term is...
Right? Like, to what end, though? Like, at that point in time, like, why are you even making a moral stand? Like,
See, the trouble would be the love part.
Eternal.
So the question is always, would you worship him? The question is, would you love him? And that would be very hard, because it's hard to love.
You can't just make yourself love someone.
You can't just make yourself love someone out of respect.
Oh, I never thought, because a lot of people, I think, would see worship as a synonym for love in that context. Like, if you're a Christian, they see worship as an act of love, right?
Sometimes.
I said a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, I guess that's why my answer separates those two things.
Yeah.
So I guess, like a lot of questions, you need to get your terms defined so that you can
that's fair.
be on the same page.
Which is why I struggled with some of these, because I was trying to figure out what the context was, and so many of them just flatly didn't necessarily pertain to me. But I could see who they might pertain to, but then you don't want to be representative of people who... Anyway. La 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 la. Did you hear me say anything, before I keep going, did you hear me say anything that you were like, oh, that was dumb? You shouldn't have said that, because sometimes I do that. Or I'll phrase it a different way, because you'll be afraid to answer. Did I say anything that you were like, I have a different perspective on that?
Well, we have different perspectives because we were very different types of Christians.
True. Yes.
So I felt like, from what I know of you, which is more than the average person, you answered in a way that I think accurately depicted what I know of your experience.
Yeah, I was honest.
I feel like my experience and your experiences were different enough that I would have had different answers. For example, I must confess, I was one of the jerks who was like, oh, I'm going to go the lacktheist route so that I can just shirk burden of proof. Like, I did that for a while.
And people do.
Yeah, and so, like, you go through these little phases. I was a mythicist for a week. Right? Like, you kind of, like, when you come out, or when I won't say anyone else, when I came out, I went through, it was very shattering. I held to a very, very fundamentalist view.
Right.
Where I did think evolution was garbage, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, your mileage may vary, and that's actually the one good thing about, I think, this set of questions was, Braxton, people could answer them very personally, and it wouldn't just be every atheist YouTuber all giving the same, this is the answer from the atheist textbook. Like, that wasn't...
Yeah. Bring out the Hitchens Manual for an Atheist. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. But the lacktheist thing, like, I both get that and don't get that. Because there are people who legitimately say, based on the context, like, I lack a belief in God.
I think there is a way to do it honestly. Yeah. But I would have to put myself in the camp that for a little while there I wasn't doing it honestly. You were doing it
dishonestly, and people do it dishonestly.
Right. So I would have to be honest enough to say that for a while I did that, and that was before I had my channel, so I'm hoping I'm demonstrating a little bit more intellectual honesty. I'm not saying it's even intellectually dishonest. You totally can be in that lack of belief camp very honestly. I just get why a Christian might be unsatisfied, shall we say.
Well, the way I look at it, like, I lack a belief in all propositions that haven't been sufficiently demonstrated to me to the point that I'm compelled to believe them. Like, is that fair? Or is that unfair?
Well, it's totally fair, and I think you pointed out very aptly that people start off with talking about the Christian God.
And then they start out with talking about...
Right.
And then smuggle in a deistic conception.
How do you not know deism is true? You can't...
How did the universe start there?
Right.
Like,
so, like, I'm totally willing to compare the Christian God to a unicorn or Santa Claus in a proper context.
because you have the same amount of belief in them.
Right, but I would
Which is
never.
none.
But I would never say all God concepts
Are like that.
are like that.
Right. Okay, that's fair. I think that's
that-
what I was attempting to articulate.
That's what I got out of your thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, that's good to know.
Do you disagree? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, they will. Oh, they will. My comment section is
Just
woo.
500. I agree with an exclamation mark.
Yeah, just, you look really nice today. I agree with everything that you said. That's
Yeah.
all it is, all day, every day, all the time. All right, Holy Spackle. I don't find hell and heaven compelling. I find purpose and restoration and hope compelling. I mean, those are concepts. I'm not sure I understand. Do you understand?
Well, I'm neither. Like I think we just said, like if we knew annihilation was a thing, we would just sign up for that. Like we're not.
Oh, yeah.
excited.
Poof
We're-
me.
Yeah, like we're not excited about heaven.
I'm not excited about the concept of heaven at all because, like, in the Christian conceptualization, like, and this is a quandary you and I brought up on a stream that we did before. Like, if I, for example, knew that my son was in hell and I somehow ended up in heaven,
Right.
I could not be happy in heaven. But by definition, you have to be happy in heaven. So the idea of heaven is nonsense to me because you're in a state where you, being you, get to retain yourself for eternity. But you have to be happy in a scenario where you would never be happy as you are now.
Right, which then goes to the thing like, so my mom, if Christianity's true, my mom is going to heaven and I'm not.
Right.
And I asked my mom this question.
Yeah.
You know, like, so will it be that you can be happy knowing your son is in hell, or can you really be you if God erases memory of me, for example?
Right.
Like, so that's those are really
Is
the
that
only
something
two.
you as you would want?
Right. So is it really that you in heaven, or like, anyway, it seems not coherent and I'm not excited about it.
And people, like, apologists seem to deal with these sorts of objections sometimes as though, oh, this is trivially foolish, meh, meh. But they're legitimate objections. And if you actually care about people retaining their faith or whatever, you should treat them as such.
Right.
Because these are the types of things, like when you look at the minutia and people are analyzing these things deeply, these are the things that start to unravel it. Really. Mm-hmm. It's not just because I want to do the gay. It's because a lot of that stuff starts to just descend into nonsense to me when I analyze it like that. When I start to really like look into what it would mean if I take it to its logical conclusion at a base level, it starts to just fall apart, and people hand wave over it, like I'm foolish or something.
So I'm sorry for that super chatter if I misinterpreted your question, but I think that was what the
It's
gist of it was.
Spackle.
Holy Spackle, hey.
Hi, Holy Spackle. Yeah, I just don't.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't understand, but I don't understand.
Now we're
lots of
spending a
stuff.
lot of time on these.
Right?
Great.
That's
All right.
because you came over. You're ruining the stream, Paul. Okay,
I haven't slept since Thursday.
you did too.
Oh.
You
that's
slept
right.
on Friday
I did.
until 5 p.m.
That's
You
true.
took a red eye, so that's fair. Thanks for all that you do. I think you're great. Aw, will you be my emotional support Canadian? I'm in quarantine right now. Sorry. But I'll be your emotional support tweeter. I'll tweet emotional support out. Rodent, no last name. I have dyslexia Dracula. Can't remember which way the blood goes. That's cute. Jesse, go to heaven for the climate and hell for the company. There's some probably pretty cool people in hell if it's real. For small cat treats, thanks. Maybe she'll like you if we get her treats. We can't go get her treats for like 2 weeks though, unless we
No.
get them delivered. We could probably get treats delivered.
Probably.
I will try to buy small cats some treats. Thank you very much. Of Caleb Alamond, sending another super chat just for all the wonderful and interesting conversations you have entertained me with during this crazy year. Oh, that's so sweet. Caleb, thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed them. I don't always do this if you're a new person here. A lot of the time I engage in dialogues with other people.
With qualified people.
People
Not like me.
far smarter than Paul. I don't usually have big dum-dum here sitting next to me. I'm just kidding. All right. Oh, new members. I don't know why. Thanks. I'm a bad YouTuber. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe don't do it because I don't know if it's worth it. All right. Caleb,
Write a review. For all you members, write a review in the chat. We'll see.
is it worth it? Look, I'll press, and I can now press that button.
Ooh, sweet.
Did it work? I don't know if it worked. Okay. It works. Yay. All right. Caleb Alamond, being gay made me a liberal Christian. It was a gateway to atheism for me. Also, living in a small town in Texas made religion less of an option. Yeah.
I am actually noticing from apologists, and I don't know if Braxton's going to go this route, but I'm seeing other apologists
More affirming?
going after what they call the liberal Christians.
Oh.
Going far more after progressive Christians
Right.
than against even atheists, because
They're eating their own young.
I think per Caleb's note there, it can be a gateway when you start allowing yourself to say that certain parts are allegory or certain parts may have been meant for a different time. That was actually the slippery slope for me.
Yeah, it might have been for me too, because once I started delving into it, because I hadn't really done all that much Bible reading as like a devout Christian when I was in like my super devout phase. So I had held all of these positions, like these beliefs on the morality of things like pro-choice and being LGBTQ and all of that stuff prior, and didn't understand how it conflicted. When I started reading the Bible, I saw how it was conflicting and started to, like I said, do these mental contortions in order to start essentially just whole cloth, just crossing out sections and being, well, that one was probably just written by a guy who didn't know what God was saying to him, or he interpreted it wrong, or it was just based on the context at the time, and that's why he said it. He's talking about what societies were like then, and then I would just do that, like the same sort of like wash, rinse, repeat over and over and over again, until I got through the Bible and was like, well, here's the 3 pages I'm going to keep as the inspired word of God. These are the ones that I'm sure these are the ones that are definitely the inspired words of God. The rest of them, some humans messed them up, and that's too bad. But when you hold that perspective, it starts to, I don't think it becomes easier to slip away, but it becomes very clear to you that your belief system is based on essentially like how you interpret it. The text.
Right, you're making God in your own image.
Right. You're interpreting the text. And then you start to ask yourself questions, if you're honest, like, well, if somebody else has a different interpretation and we need to interpret it, then that seems like a problem.
Right.
Like it needs to be interpreted.
I have many more thoughts on this. Stay tuned to our other channels. I'm actually wondering about doing.
We're wondering about doing.
Well,
what?
progressive Christianity. I'm very torn about how I feel about it. So I'm still that's an area of my life where I'm muddling through, because, of course, they're allies on some things.
Yeah.
But I feel like they are propping up some of the negative things that I feel are happening with religion unnecessarily long. So I'm a little conflicted, and my thoughts are still formulating.
Okay, that's fair. That's a good position to hold. Like, don't just start espousing a position that you're still
Right.
formulating. All right, cool. You guys are still sending super chats. Thanks. That's really nice. The Blue Dragon 777. Love you both. Former LDS Mormon. Oh, cool. Thank you for being here. Very cool. I don't think I've had a lot of former Mormons. I've got a lot of current Christians, which I love, actually. So if you're a current Christian, let me know what you thought. Like, try to be nice. I'm incredibly fragile. Goodness, I couldn't say that. That's pretty.
Do they do hashtag Foreman?
What?
Can you former Mormon? Can you short that to Foreman?
Foreman?
No, probably
Hashtag
not.
Foreman? I mean, you could. I don't know why you would, but you could totally do it. Heather Lewis, is Small Cat definitively Canadian, and how do you know? Well, I know where she was born, and it was about 4 streets over, and that's in Canada.
She's not particularly apologetic.
She's not. She doesn't like you. She's getting better. She's improving.
I've not seen her drink any maple syrup either.
To be fair, I don't have any where she can acquire it or attain it, so that might be on me. I don't know. Can you even give a cat maple syrup? I feel like
I
that's a
don't
bad
know.
idea.
She would no hockey sweaters. I don't know. It's sketchy. It's sketchy.
I don't think she would wear a hockey. She would look so freaking cute if she did, but I don't think she would. Fred Harvey, half my scotch left proves how captivating you and your chat are. Oh, that means that he had to use his hands. He didn't have time to pick it
Oh,
up.
I see. Well, now you have
Yes!
some.
Nailed it.
Good job.
I'm really good at this,
I would
everyone.
like scotch, but that's all right.
Oh, we don't have any scotch here.
No, actually, I don't. I'm
And
scotch,
we're in
scotch is
quarantine.
wasted on me. So,
Oh, there's lots of rum.
yep.
Maybe
Rum's
we can have
my
rum
drink.
after this.
There
Okay.
you go.
And we'll watch Misfits. All right. Caleb, opinions on consciousness explained by Dan Dennett. Dan Dennett is a wonderful person to read on this. Like his work on discussing qualia is phenomenal. It got me realizing just how much of perception, how much of external reality we construct in our mind and assume exists external to us. Just, it didn't dawn on me until I read Dennett. And I didn't even know he was an atheist at the time. I read him in university.
Oh, cool.
Like going through psychology. It didn't dawn on me at the time that the way I perceive, like, the colors on the doctor here, the way I perceive Jody's colors, and what I label them is arbitrary because I'm pointing to this and I'm saying, you know, this is yellow or whatever. That doesn't mean, even though we have the same label for it and I'm looking at the same object, that your experience of it is the same experience that I'm having. And he's the first person that and like, that's a super simplification of something like qualia because that experience is qualia. What were you going to say? You were about to say something.
Oh, nothing.
Very profound.
All I was going to say was that, you know, that makes sense. It's the same wavelength going to each of our eyes.
I'm not talking about the wavelength.
I
It's
know,
the same
but,
object,
well,
too.
no, but yeah. So that yeah, that's fascinating.
I'm talking about the experience. I have absolutely no way of knowing what your experience of
Right.
this object is. All I can know is what my experience of this object is.
Right.
Like, and that's even tactile, but especially visual. Visual systems intrigue me the most. Whatever you're experiencing could be something that is just not even recognizable as existing in reality to me. There's a likelihood that it's going to be something very similar or close because of the way that neural networks are structured. And like, if we're both looking at it, we're almost to the point now that we can use MRIs in the occipital lobe. If we present the same stimulus over and over, we can not know which stimulus is presented to somebody who's in an fMRI machine. And we can, based on the neural firing, recreate what stimulus was presented to them based on the neural firing. So that tells me that it's going to be something similar, probably, based on that as evidence. But I don't know that.
We don't know that, but I'm curious how that would map with studies like where they know like the color green is generally soothing. So if we're experiencing something very different, like if your yellow and my yellow are very different, at least they're probably emotionally giving us the same reaction, even if my yellow is what you consider static.
But why does it? Why
I
is
know
yellow
the
soothing
why is fascinating, but it's
because if it like I'm gonna
all
derail this entire. We'll be here
Another
for
day.
the rest of our lives if
Yeah.
you get me talking
All right.
about perceptual cognition. But anyway, yes, read Dennett. It's lovely. He does really good stuff on consciousness. His stuff on qualia is a really good place to start. Zach, I aspire to become a secular psychologist. Yay!
or as we call them in the real world, just psychologists.
Just psychologists. Just psychologists. But it's yes, exactly. Qualified psychologist. And enjoy your content as I begin to pursue this dream. Thanks for inspiring mental health positivity. I'm gonna like actually cry a little bit. That's really awesome. Thank you. That's super cool.
Go for it, Zach.
Oh, that's super cool. Good luck. Thank you. Thank you for wanting to do something to help people. That's really cool. And I'm such a baby. So dumb. Shut up. I'm not crying. You're crying. Your face is stupid. LGBTQ plus views expanded significantly upon leaving. Yep.
Yeah.
That's common.
But for me,
I was basically the same.
Although-
I became way more sex positive and way more educated, though, I think, after I left. Because I, like, pursued it more. Like, my positions on sex work changed, though. They did. Sorry, I interrupted you because I had a
Oh
thought.
no, that's quite all right. I feel beneficial that unlike most of the people in my church, I at least felt that it was no worse a sin than the other sins.
Yeah.
I definitely thought it was a sin, but I didn't think it was worse than
So you saw it as like a
stealing something from the store, or like someone, like definitely people in my circles felt that this was, there's murder and then there's being gay, right? Like,
oh wow,
like it's up there because there's verses, the person who sins sexually, is sinning against their own body, and their I forget exactly how the rest of that verse goes, but it's definitely, the Bible does give some indication that it's a bad one, right? You're supposed to be stoned for it and things like that. So I at least give myself this much credit that I was like, oh, it's just the same as stealing.
Yeah.
Or living, I always thought it was the same as like living with your girlfriend beforehand. I didn't see how it was worse than that.
Okay.
But anyway.
That's fair. The hierarchy of sin thing is a quandary to me now. Like I never saw it as a quandary before. But there's the bad ones and then the not so bad ones and the ones that we're just gonna pretend aren't sins anymore.
But yet,
New covenant.
Like thought crimes are still send you to hell though.
Yes. Yes.
Like all you have to do. So according to Jesus, just thinking, you fool, just thinking it in your head is the same as murder according to Jesus. So there's, you may or may not believe this, but the Bible is unclear on a couple things.
Sorry. I need a minute to absorb that information.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you and I are together.
I know.
This is what it's like just sitting in the living room with us, by the way, in case anybody was wondering. Are they like this all the time? Yeah, we are. We actually are like this all the time. Super cool is what we're like. All right, I'm agnostic about Jesus having existed or not. May have, may not have. Don't care enough without proof. I'm kind of the same way. I mean, you said you were a mythicist for a brief period of time.
Yep.
You covered Jesus like a lot. And the way I look at it, and this is probably going to get me all the comments, all of the, actually, I'll probably get them anyway, but so I don't care. If I will grant that I can easily grant it's a mundane claim to say an apocalyptic preacher named Yeshua existed in that time period.
Exactly.
Like that is a mundane as hell claim to me. Like it would be surprising for that not to be the case because they were just kind of wandering around all over the place.
It's the second most popular Jewish name.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Like, it doesn't change.
But I didn't get to my point, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Carry on.
But what? So that's a mundane claim. What isn't a mundane claim is that he was the Son of God and is resurrected. So. And all of the other stuff that's wrapped around him in the Bible. So do I believe that there was maybe an apocalyptic preacher with that name? Sure. I'll grant that because it's mundane. Do I believe that all the things that happened in the Bible and are attributed to him are actual facts that are representative of whoever or whatever aggregate of people it's supposed to represent? No, I don't think so. I don't think that Jesus as depicted in the Bible existed in real life. I think that the Jesus that exists in the Bible is retcon fanfic. That's what I think.
Like the time travel test, you don't think you could get in a time machine and hear the Sermon on the Mount?
No, I don't think so at all. Or watch him ascend into the sky.
Right.
But I feel like there's maybe either him or some other preachers who could have and likely did do some of the things that are attributed to him to some degree that got contorted and aggregated. I like all of that seems mundane to me. Like I grant a lot of that, but it certainly doesn't get me to resurrection.
Right. To me, it's
which is the only thing that should friggin' matter. Like an apocalyptic
Absolutely.
preacher said he was the Son of God and he died. The end is like without the resurrection, that's just the end, right?
Yep.
It's just the end. The resurrection is the only thing that matters for Christianity.
Yeah. I think the myth position it takes on a huge burden of proof that probably is not worth my time anyway to
But some people do a really good job engaging in the
Absolutely.
ideas.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good exercise to do so.
Well, I'm glad I went through that phase.
And they get so much crap. The mythicists just for existing seem to get crap, and I don't like that. That's just not nice. It's just not nice because I mean, they could be right. Like, even something between my position and their position could be right. And looking at it helps us, like, from a historical perspective, helps us garner more information. And that's what we should all want, is to test our perceptions and our theories and our beliefs.
Absolutely. Much love to our mythicist friends.
That's right. Can you name the last 3 mythicist books? Sorry, I'm a dick. Okay, I'm agnostic about. Okay, I already read that one. Thank you, Lloydie. Are you aware of unbelievable revising Dover trial?
Oh, so
No,
so
you do know this?
the Unbelievable Show, which
You were on
I was on
with Sean McDowell.
Yeah,
while you were on a frame.
I
frame.
mentioned that before. Anyway, all I saw was that they have a new episode about the anniversary of the Dover trial, the Kitzmiller versus Dover, which was the
Oh yeah, the evolution in the textbooks.
the evolution and where basically intelligent design was thrown out of court for not being science.
Right.
And that was the last major challenge in the United States of intelligent design.
Why is Unbelievable doing that?
Well, I think they're doing an anniversary. So I haven't listened to the episode. No, but it was like on this, and it was a weird number. It was like on this 18th anniversary or whatever it is. I don't think it was 18, but
okay.
Anyway, I'm just aware of it. I haven't listened to it yet, but I definitely will next time I'm out running or walking.
Interesting.
Who knows when that'll be.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. No, I did not. I haven't watched Unbelievable in a while. I should though. Like, it transitioned from more debates more so to just Justin talking a lot. And I like Justin, but I just wasn't super engaged by some of the subject matter that he was talking about, or it was just him interviewing somebody more so.
Also, even though I was one of the remote guests, I feel like the show was stronger when it wasn't remote.
Yeah, like when Matt and Alex could, like, when
they
they're in
literally
person.
when you have to look the person in the eye.
Yeah.
It's a different.
That was super unique.
Yeah.
Like watching William Lane Craig and Alex, like.
Exactly.
Yeah, or no, it was Frank Turek.
Yeah. It
was Frank Turek that came in there with Cosmic Skeptic, right? Was it?
Yes.
Yeah, like watching that in real time.
And Rationality Rules was on with somebody.
He was remote though. I was talking about like in person.
Oh, okay. I thought he was on person years ago. No, okay.
I don't think he was in person.
And
he might have been.
Like Bart Ehrman and Mike Lacona. There's some. Anyway, hopefully this is something we can get back to.
And
when there's
Paulogia and Sean McDowell.
No, we were remote. That was garbage.
It was good. It was really good. It's worth watching. Oh, last super chat. Woohoo! We did it. Thanks, guys. Would love to watch you two just chatting in the living room. I mean, you think that. It looks a lot like this without questions. It's more yelly. We yell more. It's way more yelly. Not at each other. About stuff.
About stuff.
About stuff, not at each other.
Uh-oh.
What?
There's another one.
Uh-oh. Oh, okay. When we believed in Santa Claus, flying reindeers, the Tooth Fairy, we eventually became wise. Why stop at talking donkeys, snakes, and so forth and so on? I mean, yeah, like, I guess essentially the point there is that, when you know better, you believe different things. Which, yeah, I would agree with that.
That's a worthy goal.
I think we did it. So everybody, thank you for the super chats. I really appreciate it. And becoming members. That's really cool. That's neat. If you are new here, subscribe to the channel. There's a little thing that says subscribe. If you click on that, then it subscribes you. That's generally how it works. And then YouTube will unsubscribe you almost immediately. so hit the bell too if you want to get notified when I'm attempting live streams and whatever else it is that I do here. I do all kinds of stuff. I'm really good at this. I'm amazing. I'm like very engaging and articulate, and I take it very seriously. And
you have a new button?
I do have a new button. I'll put up my end screen and keep talking. You just want me to press the button, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, there's the end screen. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. All of my links are in the description. The link to the original video that Braxton posted is also in the description. Thank you for Paulogia for getting drug into this at the last conceivable minute based on a conversation that we had in the kitchen. I appreciate you being here. Go subscribe to his channel. His link is in the description. Also, and as always, everyone, help elevate the discourse. I'm waving. You can't see me.
Bye.
Bye.